"Who are you?" she asked sharply, stopping a few steps away from Michael. Her voice was piercing, like the screech of brakes. "This is private property. You don't belong here." Michael set the box on the ground, slowly took off his baseball cap and smiled, trying to diffuse the tension. His dark skin glistened under the rays of the evening sun, and his eyes radiated calm. "Good afternoon," he replied softly. "I'm Michael, your new neighbor. I just bought this house." Eleanor squinted, sizing him up from head to toe. Her gaze lingered on his simple clothes, old SUV, and the boxes that looked too modest for a neighborhood where the average home price reached $5 million. "Neighbor," she scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "I know everyone in Willow Grove, and you were definitely not expected here. Show me your documents, or I'm calling the police." Michael felt a familiar pang in his chest, a mix of irritation and exhaustion from being forced to prove his right to be where he was, yet again. It wasn't the first time his appearance had sparked suspicion, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But he only nodded, maintaining his composure. "Of course, I can show you the documents," he said, gesturing toward the house. "They're inside. Would you like me to get them?" Eleanor didn't respond. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started dialing, not taking her eyes off him. "I'm not foolish," she said, raising the phone to her ear. "We have a respectable community here, and we don't let just anyone show up." Michael sighed, but his face remained impassive. He knew arguing was pointless. Better to act wisely. "I understand your concern, Mrs." He paused, waiting for her to introduce herself. "Crow. Eleanor Crow," she snapped. "And I head the Homeowners Association. We keep order in this neighborhood." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Crow," Michael replied, his voice even, almost friendly. "I'm sure we can sort this out." But Eleanor was already speaking into the phone, her tone growing sharper. "Yes, officer, we have a suspicious person at 17 Maple Lane. A man claims he's the new owner, but I doubt it. Come immediately." Michael shook his head, but didn't lose his composure. He turned back to the trunk, pulled out another box, and set it by the door as if nothing was happening. Deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Within minutes, a police car pulled up on the street. Two officers stepped out. A young, self-assured Officer Harris with a bleached smile, and his partner, an older Officer Rodriguez, who looked tired and somewhat indifferent. Harris approached Michael, his hand resting on his holster as if preparing for the worst. "We received a complaint that you're trespassing on this property," he said without so much as a greeting. "Show me your ID and the documents for the house." Michael stood at the threshold of his own home, feeling the neighbors' stares boring into his back from their windows. A young couple, Emily and Javier, who had recently moved into the house next door, watched the scene from their porch, but didn't intervene. Emily bit her lip, as if she wanted to say something, but Javier lightly touched her shoulder, holding her back. Michael took a deep breath, staying calm. He knew any sudden move or raised voice could escalate things. "Here are my documents," he said, pulling his driver's license from his pocket and a folder with the purchase agreement, which he kept handy for situations like this. "The house is mine. The deal was signed 2 days ago. If you'd like, I can invite you inside for coffee while you verify everything." Officer Harris took the documents, but his face remained skeptical. He skimmed the agreement, then turned to Eleanor, who stood with her arms crossed, a triumphant look on her face. "Mrs. Crow, are you sure you've never seen this man before?" Harris asked. "Absolutely," she snapped. "We have respectable people living here. I know all the homeowners, and this one—" She nodded toward Michael. "He's not one of us. How could he afford a $5 million house?" Michael felt his jaw clench involuntarily, but he only smiled. "I earned this money through my work, Mrs. Crow," he said calmly. "If you have questions about the deal, you can contact my real estate agent. His details are in the documents." Harris handed the documents to Rodriguez, who began checking them over the radio. Meanwhile, Eleanor stepped closer, her voice growing louder so the neighbors peeking from their windows could hear. "This isn't just about documents," she declared. "Willow Grove is a prestigious neighborhood. We have standards. Your arrival is already lowering our property values." Michael raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. He knew her words weren't just about standards. It was a code, masked as concern for property values. But in reality, it was the prejudice he'd seen too often. Mrs. Crowe, he said, his voice steady but firmer, I bought this house legally. If you have any issues, we can discuss them with the Homeowners Association. I hear you're in charge. Eleanor snorted. Oh, we'll discuss it, don't you worry. I'll file a complaint with the association and we'll challenge your deal in court if we have to. We won't let Willow Grove turn into… She stopped, but her glare said everything she didn't dare voice aloud. Officer Rodriguez returned Michael's documents. Everything checks out, he said quietly, casting a displeased glance at Harris. We have no grounds to detain you. Harris frowned but nodded. We're leaving, but keep those documents ready, he said, as if issuing a challenge. As the officers got back into their car and drove off, Eleanor turned to Michael, her face flushed with indignation. This isn't over, she snapped. I'll take this to court if I have to. We won't let you stay here. Michael watched her as she turned and stormed back to her house. He felt tension pulsing in his temples, but his face remained calm. He knew this was just the beginning and that Eleanor Crowe wouldn't stop. But he also knew something she didn't even suspect. Michael B. Jordan wasn't just a neighbor. He was a man who knew how to fight, not with anger, but with intelligence, dignity, and truth. After the incident on Maple Lane, Willow Grove buzzed with rumors. Eleanor Crowe wasted no time. She called an emergency meeting of the Homeowners Association, where she persuaded several neighbors to sign a petition against Michael. The petition claimed that his questionable source of funds and failure to meet neighborhood standards threatened Willow Grove's reputation. Leveraging her influence as the head of the association, Eleanor filed a lawsuit in the Los Angeles County Court, demanding the annulment of Michael's home purchase agreement due to violations of community rules. Michael, however, didn't sit idly by. He hired Layla Abrams, a young but brilliant attorney specializing in discrimination cases. Layla, an African-American woman with a sharp mind and a passion for justice, immediately saw through the association's lawsuit, recognizing it as not just bureaucratic red tape but deeply rooted prejudice. She advised Michael to file a countersuit for slander and discrimination based on racial bias. They think they can push you out because you don't fit their image of the perfect neighbor, Layla said, reviewing documents in his new home office. But we'll show them that their standards are just thinly veiled racism. Michael nodded, his face calm but his eyes burning with determination. I don't want a war, Layla, he said, but I won't let them drive me out of my home. Meanwhile, tension in Willow Grove was mounting. Some neighbors, like Emily and Javier, a young couple from the house next door, began questioning Eleanor's actions. Emily, a freelance journalist, started digging deeper, talking to other residents. She discovered that the association, under Eleanor's leadership, had repeatedly made life difficult for new residents, especially those who weren't white or didn't appear wealthy enough. Javier, an engineer with Mexican roots, admitted to Emily that he too had felt sidelong glances when they first moved in. Maybe we should talk to Michael, Emily suggested one evening. He seems like a decent guy. Javier hesitated, wary of conflict with the association, but agreed. If we stay silent, we're no better than Eleanor, he said. The Los Angeles County Courthouse was packed. Reporters from the Los Angeles Times and local news channels sat in the back rows, sensing the case could make headlines. Eleanor Crowe, dressed in a stern suit, sat next to her attorney, Mr. Clayton, an older man with a reputation for defending traditional values. Her face radiated confidence as she whispered with other association members who had come to support her. Officer Harris, called as a witness, nervously adjusted his tie nearby. Michael entered the courtroom in a simple yet elegant navy suit. His posture was relaxed but confident, his smile restrained. Layla walked beside him, carrying a folder of evidence. Emily and Javier, who had mustered the courage to attend, sat among the spectators, quietly rooting for Michael. The judge, Ellen Ramirez, an older woman with a piercing gaze and a reputation for being fair but strict, opened the proceedings. Eleanor's attorney, Clayton, began with a pompous speech about preserving Willow Grove's standards. My client, Mrs. Crowe, and the Homeowners Association are acting in the community's best interests, he declared. Mr. Jordan's purchase of the house raises concerns due to the opacity of his finances and the potential impact on property values. We demand the deal be annulled. Layla stood, her voice clear and confident. Your Honor, the association's lawsuit has no legal basis. This isn't about standards or finances, it's about discrimination rooted in racial bias. We request that the lawsuit be dismissed and that our countersuit for slander and violation of my client's civil rights be considered. The courtroom buzzed. Eleanor scoffed, but Judge Ramirez banged her gavel, demanding silence. Clayton called Officer Harris, who reiterated his story about Michael's suspicious behavior on the day of the incident. He didn't look like a typical owner of a $5 million house, Harris said, shrugging. Mrs. Crow had reason to be concerned. Layla quickly took the floor, dismantling Harris's testimony. Officer, what exactly was suspicious about my client's behavior? That he was unloading boxes in front of his own house? Or perhaps his clothing? Or his race? Harris flushed, unable to provide a convincing answer. It was Michael's turn to testify. He stood, his voice calm but resonant, filling every corner of the room. Your Honor, I am Michael B. Jordan, an actor and producer. I purchased the house in Willow Grove with my own funds, earned through my work in the film industry. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The room fell silent, reporters leaning forward. Here are my bank statements, contracts, and a letter from my financial advisor confirming the legitimacy of the deal. Layla handed the judge a folder of documents. But Michael wasn't done. This isn't just about me. The Homeowners Association, led by Mrs. Crow, systematically makes life difficult for people who don't fit their idea of acceptable neighbors. I filed a countersuit for discrimination because no one should have to prove their right to live where they choose. Layla presented evidence, Eleanor's emails referring to undesirable neighbors, records of prior complaints by the association against other minorities, and testimonies from Emily and Javier, who had finally found the courage to speak up. Emily recounted how Eleanor pressured them to sign the petition, while Javier admitted to feeling like an outsider in the neighborhood due to his heritage. Eleanor paled, her confidence melting away. Clayton tried to object, but his arguments sounded weak against Layla's ironclad evidence. Judge Ramirez adjourned the hearing, but her stern look at Eleanor and Clayton made it clear the association was in trouble. 2 weeks later, the court issued its ruling. The association's lawsuit was dismissed, and Michael was confirmed as the rightful owner of the house. In her decision, Judge Ramirez sharply criticized the association for blatant discrimination and ordered them to pay Michael $200,000 in compensation for slander and emotional distress. Eleanor Crow, as the instigator of the lawsuit, was personally fined $25,000 and forced to resign as head of the association. Officer Harris was suspended for a month and required to undergo bias training. The Los Angeles Times article about the case went viral, sparking heated discussions about racial discrimination in affluent neighborhoods. Willow Grove came under scrutiny from civil rights organizations, and the association was forced to revise its rules to avoid further lawsuits. Michael didn't celebrate his victory loudly. Instead, he invited his neighbors to a picnic in his garden. Emily and Javier were the first to arrive, bringing homemade guacamole and apologies for their initial silence. We should have stood up for you from the start, Emily said, but you're calm. It inspired us. Michael smiled. It's all good. The important thing is you're here now. Soon, other neighbors joined the picnic, some sheepishly admitting they had signed Eleanor's petition under pressure. One evening in Michael's garden became the first step toward change in Willow Grove. One evening, Eleanor knocked on Michael's door. Her face was pale, her voice trembling. I was wrong, she said quietly. I thought I was protecting my home, but I was just afraid. Michael nodded, holding no grudge. Fear fades when we talk to each other, Mrs. Crow. Come in, we've still got some barbecue. This story is about how one man, calm and dignified, changed an entire community. Injustice thrives where we remain silent. Don't be afraid to speak, support, and act. Share this story to inspire others. Together, we can make our communities fairer, one step at a time.